Okay, so I'd like to show you what I'm doing with Ableton Live and my drum triggers for the Granger Smith live show. This is Ableton Live 9. Ableton Live version 9 utilizes more RAM than Ableton 8 did, so it's less likely to crash. I never have had a single problem, even with Ableton 8, ever crashing. But Ableton 9 gives you some more capabilities that I'm excited to get involved with later. But that'll probably be another video some other time. So this is my Granger Smith live set. I have a drum rack set up down here, which is basically what runs everything. This audio track here is our click track and background tracks split left and right, just like lots of people run, very common. These are the lights and banks section are for our DMX plug-in lighting stuff that goes on to control all the lights on stage. I won't get into this because I really don't know what it is because Granger did it all. Navigation. This is another track for the iPad control that lets me navigate through this using trigger pads on the iPad. I'll probably get into that later. But the instrument rack is what I want to talk about today. This is the cues for the drum racks to load up different sounds for each song, and just tells the computer what to turn on and when. So, for instance, this is a drum rack. These are all different chains. Each song is its own chain. And there are drum racks inside the chain. And I have all of these mapped to different songs using the chain selector, and the chain selector is mapped to the drum kit's macro, because if I move this, it'll move the chain selector. So the way you do that, let's play We Do It in the Field. It's our intro, and it's at 0. You'll see that the chain selector is at 0 because I don't have anything loaded for that song. I don't want anything on. I don't want any triggers to be activated. I don't want any sounds going off when they shouldn't be going off. Now, when I get to Sleeping on the Interstate, which is the first song that I have any sounds for, you'll notice the chain selector moves over to activate the Sleeping on the Interstate chain right here. That simply just brings up everything I have programmed for Sleeping on the Interstate. Now, the way that I do this is this drum kit's macro for Sleeping on the Interstate is set to move the chain selector to select that chain. So, as soon as I play Sleeping on the Interstate, the macro for the drum kit's knob brings up, it'll move. Like when I go to the next song, that's what I do with it. You'll see it goes to 0. This chain selector goes to 0. The drum kit's macro turns to 0. And then that turns the chain selector here all the way to 0, which means nothing loads. When I go to Silverado, which is a song that has some effects in it, the drum kit, you can see the orange section is halfway up. That means the modulation has changed. Come on. And the modulation is right here, which is higher than it was before. And that means that it changes to select a chain further down the list. And you can adjust these. You can change the positions and the size of them. And I've had to do that before just to fit more songs in here. So you just set the chain selector to hit whatever value you're on. We're on Silverado, so it's right here. You can see it falls right in between those lines. So it activates the Silverado drum rack. And I can load in here anything I want. Now, even more specific than that, let's go back to Sleeping on the Interstate. Sleeping on the Interstate, I have these sounds loaded. I've got a electronic snare sound, I've got an electronic kick sound, I've got a rim sound, And I have what I've named Dusty's 808 of Death, which is the big giant bass hit that makes an appearance for the first time in this song. Now, I'll let this run, and I'll show you how I can turn on and off the drum rack only when I need it. You'll notice it just came on. And that happens with the device on macro. The device on macro, you'll notice, is off for the first couple seconds and then turns on only when I need it. Because I don't want any possibility of a trigger going off in the wrong spot or something weird happening and all of a sudden people are hearing cowbells before songs and things. So when I cue this song, you'll notice it's off, and then you'll be able to watch it turn on. On, right here. Now, furthermore, I can turn on the actual individual triggers with these macros right here. And you'll notice the kick and the rim turn on right there. Only when I need them. And that's done with the same principle. You go up here. First, you have to assign the device on for the rim. This is how I do it. The rim sound, set up just like the drum racks, but this is just chains. The rim sound, I map the on to a macro which I eventually renamed as rim on. And the rim on modulation changes from 0 to 100%, which is basically off to on, right when I need it. And I'll start that over. And you'll see that the instrument rack is activated, instrument rack comes on, and then nothing is still activated yet. None of the sounds are able to be heard. And then the instrument rack for the rim will turn on. Rim and the kick. So now I can play the kick and the rim for that part of the song. And it only plays when I hit it. It's not pre-recorded, it's not tracked. And then what's going to happen is this 808 is going to turn on, preparing itself for the very last hit of that break.
1, 2, out.
808. And then these turn off because I no longer need them. And the snare on comes on because I have an electronic snare, which is a sample taken directly from the album, which is on the rest of it's on the snare for the remainder of the song. And that's how I'm able to incorporate the exact drum sounds that Granger has on his CD, on the album, into the live show, so that there's literally nothing lacking. And the next song, that's what I do with it. I have no electronic sounds for that song. So when I hit it, the drum kit's macro goes back to 0, the chain selector drops to 0, and nothing is activated over here. Now, the next song that I use a sound on is Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, the John Mayer cover. And on this song's simple because I have an electronic snare on an electronic snare pad that's dedicated only to it. I'm not assigning a sound to a trigger that's on a drum. So I don't have to worry about turning it on or off. It's got its own dedicated pad. I just leave it on all the time. And I have a bunch of sounds loaded in here, but that is the sound that I use. And sometimes I hit it a lot. I might want to hit it during a verse, I might want to hit it during a chorus. It's just loaded on its own dedicated pad, ready for me to hit whenever. Okay, next song is Gypsy Rain. You'll notice when I play the song, the drum kit's macro value is set to something within that range, 36 to 39. So it'll jump over, turn on the Gypsy Rain. Well, it already did because I clicked on it, but you'll see it happen. When I play Gypsy Rain, it moves over here. Now this is a good example of turning on a trigger only when I need it, because I have a cowbell that's on the kick drum, and you'll notice you can't even hear it because it's not even on right now. Because the device on button right here is mapped to this macro. And I only want it to be on for the guitar solo break that's after the second chorus, which would be way down there, right there. So I only want that cowbell to be on for only that break, because it's a kick drum only break. It's a 4 on the floor kick drum guitar solo break, and that's all I want to hear. And this is going to sound weird because the click's not going to line up, but you'll be able to see it. It'll turn on only when I need it. This macro will all of a sudden light up, and then we've got cowbell on our kick drum. And then it'll go off. Eventually. There it is. So now I'm kicking the kick drum and there's just no more cowbell. And then I can, play the rest of the song without an annoying cowbell hitting every single time. You only want the cowbell when you need it. So it turns itself on and off for that amount of time. Next song is We Bleed Maroon, which has no sounds on it, so when I play that, chain selector goes back to 0 and nothing is loaded. And I play the next couple songs without anything in the way. Now, the interface I use, I have all of my triggers ran to a Alesis Trigger I/O interface, which hooks up through USB and allows me to load sounds to any one of these squares in this Ableton sample library. You notice that you can click and drag and scroll up and down. You can assign your triggers to different MIDI notes, and you basically just have to, organize all your triggers. I usually have my snare drum right here. I usually have any kick drum effects right here, and then floor toms, and then electronic snares usually come down here. Just to keep things organized. There's a song called Stick Around, which is going to be on the new album.
2, 3.
And that song has a crazy reverse cymbal effect with some effects. The cool thing about this is that you can utilize all the effects that are already in Ableton Live. Like, you see this one's I have a filter delay and a grain delay. And using my iPad, I can manipulate any of these XY pads because I use a iPad app called Touchable. And Touchable will let you set up an XY pad to adjust any of these parameters from the iPad live. So I could change the sound of this. I could make it infinite delay, and I could mess with the filters. I could do anything live. It's basically a pedal board for your drum set. And the cool thing about the macros is that the macros act as your effects loop. So just the same way that a guitarist might load up whatever effects he wants to use for a certain part of the song, and then turn the effects loop on when he wants it, and then kill the effects loop when he doesn't want it, this is exactly the same idea, but for a drummer. And that's kind of a cool sound. And that's about it. That's what I use live, and that's what I use Ableton Live for. And I mean, the possibilities are very endless. I can load up all the sounds that Granger wants on the album. On his new album, he's got a lot of electronic drum sounds, and we don't have to track them because I can just apply the exact sounds to either existing drums in my kit or to an electronic kick trigger or an electronic snare pad, and I can reproduce exactly what's on his album live.